Great, wonderful. I'm Dr. Kevin Meehan. I'm the Associate Director of the PhD program in Clinical Psychology, and we'd like to welcome you to LIU Brooklyn. You got a notification about this, but we just want to inform everybody that the webinar is being recorded. It's going to be available in the library of the website of the Institute for Professional Development. You'll receive a link during the colloquium. So to open this up, it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Alexander Lupis, who will be our moderator today. Alex is really the catalyst for this colloquium, bringing together the National Psychological Association of Ukraine and Long Island University's Institute for Professional Development. Alex is an international human rights activist. Before becoming a clinical psychologist, he worked in the Balkans and former Soviet republics. His wife, Katya, is a human rights lawyer working on behalf of Ukrainian lawyers, and they have 3 lovely daughters. Alex is a graduate of our PhD program in clinical psychology. He graduated from LIU in 2016 and is a scholar and practicing clinician. He has longstanding interests in trauma and its effects on children. His research is focused on the multi-generational legacies of trauma in children of war veterans in the former Yugoslavia. In addition to these activities, Alex volunteers his considerable talents as an international training coordinator for the National Psychological Association of Ukraine. So we're very delighted to have you, Alex.
Thank you so much, Dr. Meehan. It's a pleasure. We're very excited to hear from our speakers today who are doing innovative and heroic work under incredibly difficult conditions in Ukraine. We have a full schedule today, so let's all do our best to stay in our time limits. For our introduction to this event, I would like to introduce Dr. Joan Duncan, who is a professor of psychology, a lifelong human rights activist, and a practicing clinical psychologist. Dr. Duncan received her BA from Howard University, PhD from Clark University, and completed her postdoctoral training in clinical psychology and community consultation at Yale University. She is the former associate director of the PhD program in clinical psychology here at LIU and the founder and co-director of the Institute for Professional Development. Her work focuses on addressing the psychological and educational needs of vulnerable children, families, and communities through situation analysis, program development, and evaluation of international and domestic non-governmental programs, particularly those assisting communities affected by war, genocide, forced migration, health pandemics, and natural disasters. In this role, she's been the program director or lead consultant working with international organizations such as UNICEF, the Ford Foundation, Save the Children, IRC, and United for Kenya, among others, and has worked and or lived in numerous countries, including Mozambique, South Africa, Bosnia, Rwanda, Thailand, Malawi, Zimbabwe, and most recently, Kenya. Dr. Duncan, please.
Thank you, Alex. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to everyone. The war in Ukraine has resulted in the largest refugee crisis since World War II. Over 8 million refugees have fled Ukraine across Europe. 90% are women and children, and nearly 6 million Ukrainians have been displaced from their homelands. Front lines remain fluid. Wars bring death, disability, destruction, disruption of mental health care, education, social protection, and heartbreak. Lives put on hold. Worldwide, according to UNHCR, there are over 34 million refugees, and a little less than half are under 18. And this number is only increasing. Given the rapidly growing numbers of worldwide forcibly displaced persons, refugees, immigrants, and communities impacted by trauma and loss, there is now an urgent need to provide comprehensive, trauma-informed, and culturally responsive training to a broader range of mental health providers and others who work in concert to address the unique psychological, educational, and social support needs within these communities. There's also a need to foster collaborative research. This is our purpose today, to collaborate with our esteemed colleagues at the National Psychological Association of the Ukraine to help build a literature on effective, evidence-based interventions and approaches to care, to share our thoughts and work together. The mission of the Institute for Professional Development, created by myself and Dr. Caroline Clauss-Ehlers, attempts to accomplish both of these objectives. We want to thank you all for your participation today in our inaugural colloquium. I'd also like to extend a very sincere thank you to our colleagues at the National Psychological Association of Ukraine for sharing your work despite the enormous and very real challenge of doing this while at war. And now I'd like to turn it back over to Alex to introduce my colleague and co-director of the Institute, Dr. Clauss-Ehlers, for her remarks. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Duncan. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Caroline Clauss-Ehlers, aka Dr. Cici. She attended Oberlin College, graduating with honors in government and stimulating an ongoing concern for how psychology can inform public policy and create social change. She completed her doctorate in counseling psychology at Teachers College, Columbia University, with a pre-doctoral internship at Bellevue Hospital, New York University Medical Center, within the bilingual treatment program. Dr. Cici is a professor of psychology in the School of Health Professions at Long Island University, Brooklyn, an honorary professor at the Universidad Peruana Cayetano Heredia, and an affiliate faculty member for Rutgers Global at Rutgers University. Born in New York and raised in Venezuela, Dr. Cici has worked with both English and Spanish-speaking communities throughout her career. She was a Rosalind Carter Fellow for Mental Health Journalism and currently serves as an advisory board member for this program. Dr. Cici leads the Cultural and Community Resilience Lab, where she and mentees engage in research focused on trauma, global mental health, resilience, and culturally responsive intervention. Dr. Cici.
Thank you so much. Just thank you, Dr. Duncan, Dr. Lupis. Thank you for all of our participants and also to our students who have been instrumental in today's event. Want to just thank Daniel, Derek, Ella, Erica, Faith, Jane, Liz, Maya, Ronchal, Sydney, and Tali. Thank you so much for your collaboration. Also wanted to thank Stuart for his wonderful IT support and Dr. Philip Wong for his support as well. I wanted to begin with a quote of hope, and this quote has its place in history while also being relevant to today's colloquium. And the quote is, "I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. This is why right, temporarily defeated, is stronger than evil triumphant. I believe that even amid today's mortar bursts and whining bullets, there is still hope for a brighter tomorrow. I believe that wounded justice, lying prostrate on the blood-flowing streets of our nations, can be lifted from this dust of shame to reign supreme among the children of men. I have the audacity to believe that peoples everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education and culture for their minds, and dignity, equality, and freedom for their spirits." This is a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that was part of his acceptance speech for the Nobel Peace Prize given on December 10th, 1964, accepted amidst the civil rights movement in the United States. A year ago, in June 2022, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees reported a record high number of displaced people that they described as one of the largest forced displacement crises since World War II, with 100 million people being displaced. Last summer, the hope was that this number would start to decrease. Tragically, 2023 reports indicate that there are currently 103 million forcibly displaced people. The UNHCR describes how this crisis is reflected in conflict situations experienced in countries such as Ukraine, Democratic Republic of the Congo, the Horn of Africa, the US-Mexico border, and has an impact on people from Venezuela, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, Cuba, Haiti, and Nicaragua, among other countries. Afghanistan, the Central Sahel, and Haiti, as well as the danger of sea crossings and critical issues like food insecurity, the climate crisis, and statelessness. To find solutions to change this treacherous trend, we need points of partnership where we can develop creative, caring, collaborative solutions. The Norwegian Refugee Council presents 4 strategies. 1, work together. 2, increase support. 3, protect asylum seekers in ways that honor the true meaning of non-refoulement, or the international law that says it is unlawful to return an asylum seeker to a country where they would be harmed. And 4, tackling root causes through strategies like developing peace agreements. Work together is modeled in today's colloquium through the partnership between LIU Brooklyn's Institute for Professional Development and the National Psychological Association of Ukraine. We hope a dialogue is created that captures our collective experiences. These experiences are reflected in multi-tiered partnerships, a collaboration between and among nations, faculty and students, alumni and current students, organizers and participants. At each level, we are encouraged to consider the intersection of our personal stories and the stories we hear today. Through this dialogue, we hope to explore strategies to support global mental health in a context of a global forced displacement crisis. Through this dialogue, we hope to cultivate additional tiers of a collective partnership. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sisi. Now it's time for our plenary session. I'd like to introduce the first of our 3 speakers. Our first plenary speaker is Aterm Osypian, a mental health expert with the MH4U, Mental Health for You project, and with Veteran Hub, as well as a member of the National Psychological Association. Erica will send a raised hand when you have 1 minute left. Aterm, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Do you hear me well?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay, then I will share my presentation right now. Do you see the presentation on the screen? Yeah? No? Yeah, great.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, great. So first of all, thank you for this possibility to share my knowledge. It's a great pleasure to be here now. So the only moment I want to add, right now I'm I'm in the military. I'm in the Armed Forces of Ukraine, so I'm an officer of psychology. So those information about me is before the full-scale war. That's the important moment related to my current presentation. So in this 8 minutes, I will provide you with a brief overview of the system of psychological support in Ukrainian army from my subjective point of view. So there's not an official position of government or Ministry of Defense. So it's just my observation, I can say. Also, I will not provide you with any data on PTSD or acute stress reaction among soldiers or combatants, because all this data now is outdated. It's old because it came from the period before the full-scale war. So now everything has changed, and we need new researches. And also, we know that currently access to any information about the Ukrainian army, including mental health issues, is limited. So we don't have new, fresh data, I can say. So first of all, let's differentiate military psychology from civilian psychology. I think we all understand the difference, and military psychologist is different from, for example, civilian trauma-focused psychotherapists who work with the veterans. So it's 2 different specialists, and they have different backgrounds, and they have for sure different responsibilities. In the Ukrainian army, switch that. Yeah, in the Ukrainian army, there are few positions. So there are certain positions, mostly that's officer positions that include roles such as moral and psychological support officer. We call them MPS officers. This is quite an old school and Soviet format. In fact, they serve as a HR personnel officer of the unit in the military. So in fact, they are like HR in the army. So they are responsible for example, informing unit members, conducting official investigation, documentation, and so on. Also, there are officer psychologists like myself now, for example. This position involves addressing the psychological needs of soldier. Again, in Soviet approach, Soviet army approach, an officer psychologist was responsible for providing soldiers with propaganda and prevent suicides. That's it. Now everything changed, and currently in Ukraine, this position, the position of officer psychology, includes training of commanders and soldiers and in self-help methods, peer-to-peer support methods, especially related to combat stress reactions. They're responsible for training, for providing individual interviews, psychological consultations, debriefing, psychological groups, decompression, and so on. The officer psychologist works with the battalion level, on the battalion level, while, for example, combat stress control group, it's another level of help. I guess in USA, they call the combat operational stress control. So it's the structural unit at the brigade level that works with various subordinate units, which have the most need of such services, psychological support, of psychological help. For example, they can come to the unit that has experienced the most psychogenic losses, or the most demotivated unit, and they can came to their location and work with them. So it's like mobile group, I can say. Also, there is some changes in the system, and I will give you a quick brief update. So there will be no longer battalion level officer. So officer psychologist from the battalion will be transferred to psychological support groups. So that's more stationary position. So they work in points of psychological support, where different soldiers came from the front line if they need, for example, rest, or if they have some acute conditions. So why it's happening? Because we all understand that in Ukrainian army, we all understand that officer psychologist, one officer psychologist cannot effectively work with the battalion with the amount of 7 or even 700 people or 500 people. It's impossible. Yeah, so, and decompression and psychological rehabilitation is other level of help, is other category. So such people who need, for example, psychological rehabilitation, they can be referred by military psychologist or medical service of the unit to different rehab centers or clinics, mental health clinics, and decompression is a short period when usually it happens on the rotation. So when people can have time to rest, for example. So on that level, military psychology works with the soldiers when they have a rotation. So it looks like that. So it's the triangle. So the top level of triangle is like more low intense interventions, when the low intense interventions are needed, and the bottom is part is, for example, it's more high intense interventions is needed. So that's how looks like the military psychological service now looks like in army. That's something like that. So now I want to talk about gaps. It's important to understand what we can do better in this system. So gaps and problems in our system. So for sure, we understand that enemy is not only outside of the army, also it's inside the army, and this includes not only traitors, but also the persisting old Soviet approach of military psychology. Unfortunately, it still exists in army. So let me give you a small example related to issues of problems with the orders, protocols, and documentations. This problem is existing in our military psychology. We have the order that
Mr. Osypian, we're at time almost for the next speaker. If you could just wrap it up and make a final comment. We're about at time.
Yeah, okay, no problem. So that's the list of the main problems and gaps that you can see in our military psychology system, and there's the key points of my presentation. So the most important one, maybe what I wanted to share with you, is that probably the commander, not the position, not formal position of military psychology that exists in our army, but the commander with the skills in psychological help and crisis psychological intervention is the best way to solve the current problems in Ukrainian military psychology. And also commander may be the best alternative to this formal position of service psychologist. Yes, so that's the key point. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mr. Osypian. Thank you very much. Very informative. Our next plenary speaker is Dr. Ganna Naydonova, an associate professor at the Department of Psychology and Medicine, Drahomanov State University of Ukraine in Kiev. Please, Dr. Naydonova, we're listening.
Hello, do you see my presentation?
Yes, it's visible.
Thank you for opportunity to share the results of our research, which was conducted together with Pogorelska Natalia, PhD, Mental Health Division, Associate Professor of the Department of General Psychology, Taras Shevchenko Kyiv National University, Kyiv, Ukraine. The war in Ukraine destroyed the existence of many Ukrainians, affected their self-awareness, broke their sense of self, and changed their attitude towards themselves, others, and the world. Experiencing war as a traumatic event can have various consequences, from disorganization of life to discovery of hidden psychological reserves, and as a result, flourishing. It is about the phenomenon of post-traumatic growth, that is, psychological growth resulting from trauma, when a person develops inner strength, acquires greater resilience, and becomes more mature and psychologically integrated. That is why our research aimed to determine the features of the psychological growth of Ukrainians during the war. And you see participants, methods, and aims on the next slide. Our results. Determination of the characteristics of time perception revealed a low percentage of representation of discreteness and emotional unpleasantness of time. Time tension was not found in test subjects at all. Generally, the sample is characterized by a high level of time continuity, emotional pleasantness, and relaxation. Therefore, the study sample is characterized by the perception of time as smooth, continuous, and monotonous, stretched, and empty. That is, it indicates that the subject experiences the infinity of time precisely because their lives are insignificant in relation to the historical event that is taking place now. The presence of correlations between the factors of time perception and the factor of positive shifts in the psychotraumatic situation new possibilities allows better understanding of the identified features. There are relationships between continuity and new possibilities, relaxation and new possibilities. The new possibilities factor demonstrates that a person develops new interests as a result of experiencing a traumatic situation, directs life to a new path and gains confidence that she can make his life better. It opens up opportunities not available before. The individual tries to change what needs to be changed more confidently. Thus, the result of experiences for a psychotraumatic situation opens up new opportunities for our subjects, forces them to make their lives better by experiencing a sufficient amount of time for these changes. The search for correlations between the levels of manifestation of factors of time perception and factors of positive shifts revealed another significant relationship. Thus, individuals who experience this period of time as emotionally pleasant indicate a high level of increase in the appreciation of life. This suggests that a person's life priorities have changed. She began to understand the value of her own life much better. Now, she values more every day of life. The use of regression analysis made it possible to better understand the psychological factors in the formation of psychotraumatical growth. It was found that the continuity of time stimulates the emergence of new interests, a new life plan, path, the desire to make life better. The personality trait consciousness stimulates the growth of personal strengths, and extroversion stimulates the increase in the appreciation for life. Thus, the most noticeable factors of post-traumatic growth were perception of time, vision of new possibilities and prospects, increasing the appreciation for time. It is the continuity of time and the openness to of the individual to new experiences that stimulates a person to see opportunities for growth, the emergence of new interests in the psychotraumatic situation, and reveals the breadth of perspective. Continuity of time indicates the homogeneity of the perception of events, discreteness as a category of the opposite of continuity, indicates the perception of time as interrupted, passing in spurts. Therefore, the continuity of time indicates the adaptability of a person, the absence of disorientation, and a certain psychological shock state from the beginning of a full-scale invasion of Russia to Ukraine. Individuals with a high level of openness to new experiences are inquisitive. They are attracted to everything new. They are somewhat adventurous. Thus, perceiving time as continuous and being open to new experiences prevents focusing on losses and regrets about what has not been accomplished and directs the individual's attention to new horizons. Perception of the continuity of time also helps to increase the personal strengths along with consciousness and emotional stability. Thus, it indicates that our subjects integrated new experience and acquired a sense of their own strength and stability. Their self-confidence increased thanks to their organization, self-discipline, calmness, and being in a situation of timelessness. Consciousness and extroversion participate in increasing of the appreciation for life. Therefore, the absence of isolation, integration with other people, self-organization, and self-discipline help in the emergence of a feeling of gratitude for each new lived day. The absence of revision or constant search for what is really important. The emotional tension of time and emotional instability becomes an obstacle to spiritual growth. Frequent mood swings, lack of self-control, impulsivity, and other symptoms of emotional lability on the one hand, and the feeling that life runs very fast and it is not possible to fully organize it, hinder the understanding of spiritual problems values and deepening of religiosity. And emotional instability on the contrary. I will end
concluding
in 1 minute.
please.
On the contrary, allows
Yes.
to improve the attitude towards others. For example, the inability to control one's emotional state and experiences, impulsivity, and inability to make decisions independently help to appreciate and empathize with others more, accept them together and with their shortcomings. And also we determine the characteristic of type perception and personality traits of persons with different levels of psychotraumatic growth. And we saw a statistically significant difference in the perception of emotional pleasantness of time in persons with different growth levels. Individuals with the lowest level of post-traumatic growth have the highest level of emotional pleasantness, and individuals with an average level of growth have the lowest level of emotional pleasantness. And we want to continue the search for post-traumatic growth resources. And we also conducted one more series of research, and now we are processing our results. And so that the key role of gratitude in the process of post-traumatic growth. I forgot about intention. And so thank you for your attention and support of Ukraine.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your research, Naydonova, Professor Naydonova. Thank you. Next is our final plenary speaker, Dr. Valeriia Palii. She's the president of the National Psychological Association in Ukraine. Dr. Palii, we're listening.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be with you today. And I apologize for my, I'm a little bit late due to some technical issue. Okay. It's a big pleasure for me to be with you today and tell you a bit about our work. But firstly, I want to tell you a little bit about the National Psychological Association of Ukraine. We are a young professional community. We founded in 2017. And before that, there were many different small professional organizations in Ukraine that united psychologists according to methods or area of work. We became the first professional community, just simply united psychologists. And we started with 200 psychologists. And now today there are about 1,800 psychologists are our members. The NPA represents Ukraine in the European Federation of Psychologists Association. We also closely work with the American Psychological Association and represent our country in the Global Psychology Alliance. And I want to say that international partnership and collaboration are very important for us. From the first days of the full-scale invasion, the NPA began to do everything to support our members and to support our fellow citizens. Let's see what we did. With the support of our friends and colleagues, we started to conduct lectures, trainings, and courses on currently relevant topics. Our friends and partners all over the world help us with that. All events translated into Ukrainian and are free for our members. More than 10,000 psychologists have already undergone various trainings from the NPA over the past year. We pay special attention to supervisory support for our colleagues, peer-to-peer groups, and mentoring. And of course, all of this is also free help for our members and for our colleagues who need it. We advocate on behalf of the interest of our country at the international level of professional communities, and it's important for us to talk about Ukraine in different fields, both scientific and practical. Our colleagues in Ukraine appreciate our proactive international position in working with foreign partners and see the merits of it. We also intensified work with our government and ministries, and more of our specialists, our psychologists are involved in various important projects that bring our victory closer and speed up the recovery of our colleagues. We help colleagues with finding jobs because we know that many of them have lost their homes and need jobs and need money. And we support those who find themselves abroad, build bridges with partners association in neighboring countries, help them with legalization and employment. But our main idea is also to help our fellow citizens, and that's why the NPA launched a hotline of free psychological help for our fellow citizens, which work both within Ukraine as well as in 21 European countries. On this initiative, we receive different types of support, financial support. We received small grants from the American Psychological Association, from the UNDP in Ukraine, technical support provided by the AWC and Deloitte company, and training support provided by the Portuguese Psychological Association and the American Psychological Association as well. 11 psychologists work on our hotline, 3 psychologist administrators, and 2 supervisors. And I'm going to share with you some data. And this data collected from the beginning of June 2022 till the 3rd of May 2023, almost a year. So we proceeded 4,255 calls from our clients. Okay, I see. And most of them are psychological calls, but we also help people with different social requests, humanitarian requests. The majority of our callers are women and middle-aged women. The top 5 of countries, of course, it's Ukraine, Poland, Germany, France, the United Kingdom, and the Czech Republic. And the top 5 of requests, psychological requests with stress response, family and relationship problems, symptoms of mental health disorders. Here you can see the different phone numbers in each country, and if you want to support our hotline, you can make some donations using this link. And thank you very much. I think I'm in time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Palii, for your presentation. Thank you. Now we have time for several questions for our 3 plenary speakers. So Erica, please feel free to read out the first question.
Yes, so as we continue with this discussion, we have approximately 10 minutes to ask our 3 plenary speakers before we go into our breakout room session. And so you can use the Q&A function, and I'll read them out loud for our panelists. And panelists, you can also access the Q&A yourselves if you want to type a response. So the first question is, how can we connect with the NPA of Ukraine to offer whatever assistance I may be able to offer as a developmental psychopathologist and child clinical psychologist? I've worked with trauma and PTSD since the 1990s. So if any of our 3 panelists wish to answer, you can unmute or you could type in the Q&A.
I'm not sure that I understand the question correctly. In the NPA, we have a division of child psychology and adolescent psychology, and they work with children and provide different types for support for them. So if someone wants to help or collect some data from them, they can write to our division and ask them about the current situation, the current needs, and about some maybe new information and some updates about that.
Okay, so the next question is, what follow-up services are available to those calling into the hotlines?
Maybe I will tell you about our hotline. In our hotline, we provide crisis psychological support. From May 2023, we also added 2 psychiatrists to our hotline because it's important for us, because we observe some growth of mental health disorders, and our psychologists asked us about some strengths in their position, and now we work with 2 psychiatrists, and we also provide some psychological support online groups for people who need maybe more sustained support and kind of help. But we are not unique hotline in Ukraine. There are many different services, different hotlines which focus on different topics. For example, we have suicide prevention hotline, violence prevention hotline, military support hotline, and so on. We also have many initiatives on the ground which help people to overcome consequences of war. So we are not unique, but we're unique with our services because we provide audio and video calls, and we operate in 21 European countries. It's our benefit.
Okay, great. So we have lots of questions coming into the Q&A. So this one is for Dr. Naydonova, and they are asking, could you tell us more about how you measured their sense of time? Is this a place where psychologists could intervene?
Thank you for the question. And we measure the sense of time using the time experience scale. The authors are Ukrainian psychologists, Kronik and Hrubaia, and I think that it is very problematically to change the person's perception of time. But our main purpose is to indicate the factors of post-traumatic growth, and the perception of time and its different dimensions was where the maybe different variables which we checked and checked their influence on the post-traumatic growth.
All right, great. So then the next question that I see is, have you considered, so I guess this would be for you, Valeriia, have you considered training non-psychologists for the hotline that you were talking about?
Training for non-psychologists?
Yes, have you considered, so have the hotlines that you were describing? No. Okay.
No. We have very strict restrictions for our employees. We only professional psychologists who have 6-year university training can work with us, and crisis training are also important for our psychologists, and we collaborate only with psychologists who have postgraduate education in evidence-based methods of psychotherapy. We also do a lot to support our psychologists. We provide for them free education, small trainings, lectures, and twice a week it's obligatory for them to attend supervising sessions with other colleagues. So we pay special attention for their competencies and to their quality of their work.
Okay, great. So then the next, we have 2 more questions. So I think we'll have time for both of them. One of them is, and I guess this can be for any of the panelists, do you refer people to individual therapists in the community? Do you refer, yes, that's the question. Do you refer people to individual therapists in the community?
NPA can join professional psychologists who have completed education or are students in psychology, and our members work in different fields. It could be psychodiagnostic or clinical psychologist or psychotherapy or school psychology. So we join psychologists from different fields, not only from psychotherapy.
Okay, and the next question is, how prevalent was psychology in Ukrainian culture before the war? How common was it for people to seek out psychotherapy? And do you feel this is changing with the war and future directions for psychology and psychopathology?
We observe that the demand for psychotherapy and crisis counseling are growing, and it's obvious. And more and more people ask for help. Of course, we still have stigma and some prejudice about psychologists or psychiatrists. But I think that the situation is changing, and it's important for us, for our recovery, and it's important to speak about mental health, to explain the main challenges in this field. Maybe Hannah, do you have something to add in this case?
I agree with you that maybe now people have more opportunities to have psychological help and psychological support because of different services and hotlines.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Palii, Dr. Naydonova, and Mr. Osypian.
I think as we're getting our breakout room set up, as that's the next thing on our schedule. We're actually have time for a few more questions while we finish getting that set up. So I'll read the last 2 questions in the chat, and then when I get the go ahead, we'll get the breakout room set up and going. So the last 2 questions, one is lessons learned from coordination. Okay, well, this will be the last questions because Dr. Cece just sent the breakout room information. So last question for our panelists is lessons learned from coordination efforts, if any, with general medical associations, including psychiatry in Ukraine. And I can type it to our panelists as well.
Okay, maybe I will tell. I think that we need about lessons learned. I think that the current biggest problem in Ukraine is that we have many different mental health services in Ukraine, but we don't have a clear roadmap what we can do and what the next step could be. And it's important for us to maybe to collect all services, all mental health services, pro bono and paid services for customers, for clients, and maybe and for mental health providers for better understanding. It's a big problem because we have mess in this system. And I read in the chat that I realized that I didn't understand the previous question correctly. Yes, we refer our clients from the hotline to individual therapists, but not for paid therapists. We try to refer our clients to pro bono psychotherapists or for pro bono services because it's important for us. We provide all psychological services for free, and I'm not sure that all our clients have enough money to pay for individual psychotherapy. So pro bono conception in the current situation is extremely important for us and for our citizens also.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Lupis, and he will transition us into our breakout.
Thank you so much again. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Dr. Palii, Dr. Naydonova. Thank you for the presentations. Now it's time for us to start transitioning to the next section of the event. At this point, we can proceed to one of the 4 breakout rooms. In the chat section below, the links to the 4 breakout rooms will be provided. So please click on the one that you had chosen, and your presentations will start shortly. After the breakout group is done, there'll be another link in the chat section back to the main group. Thank you.
All right. So, hello, everyone. Welcome to our breakout group, supporting children and youth caught in the crossfire of war. I will be our moderator today. So to use our time wisely, I'm going to have each presenter introduce each other. And then I'll time each presentation, and I will let each speaker know when they have 1 minute left using the raise hand function. Discussion, questions, and comments will be done through the chat room following each presenter. I will read the discussion questions as they appear in the chat room. We have about 10 minutes to discuss each presentation. So why don't Dr. Velykodna, if you want to start by introducing Dr. Kolisnyk, and we'll go from there.
Please, Dr. Kolisnyk. Okay. Good morning or good afternoon, dear colleagues. It's a pleasure for me to introduce to you my colleague, Mariana Velykodna. Mariana has PhD in psychology. She is a Eurosci registered psychologist. She is an associate professor at Practical Psychology Department at Kryvyi Rih State Pedagogical University, Kryvyi Rih, Ukraine. And Mariana is the head of Psychoanalytic Psychology and Psychotherapy Division in the National Psychological Association of Ukraine.
Thank you, and please welcome Dr. Lyudmyla Kolisnyk. She is a counseling psychologist from Sumy State University, Ukraine, and now she is also a research fellow in Aarhus University in Denmark. She is a deputy head of the NGO Association of Psychologists of Higher School of Ukraine.
Thank you.
I will start by sharing my screen. My presentation is entitled Psychological Effects of the War on School Students and Changes in School Psychological Services. I want to start that studies involving school children and adolescents in wartime are challenging, and to the moment, you may find, if you will search both in English or in Ukrainian, you will find that 0 studies in psychology or mental health reported results on studying Ukrainian children after the 2022 Russian invasion directly. I mean, directly involving children, assessing children. But we have some studies devoted to indirect research. One study surveyed school psychologists on their observations about school children's response to the war. 2 studies surveyed primary school teachers on their attempts to adjust education to wartime, and besides, what do they observe in children? One study, which is in press, surveyed children's parents about their children's response to the war. One study reported mental health professionals' experience in working with Ukrainian children. And one study assessed the mental health of Ukrainian adolescent refugees in Germany. So you can find a study which assesses children within Ukraine to the moment. And this situation is not new for us. After the 2014 Russian invasion, first data about children was collected a year or 2 after. So in 2015, in 2016, and later. I won't comment on these points. You can just see some references about school children during that period. This presentation refers to a study which I conducted together with my colleagues. You may see 3 studies actually, but the first one will be showed more today. This study also includes Lyudmyla Kolisnyk, who was a co-author of this. And we worked in April 2022. We tried to gather information from psychologists who works at schools from Kryvyi Rih. Kryvyi Rih, it is a city in the central part of Ukraine, which was 50 kilometers near the front line, near the hostilities. And this city experienced daily missile attacks when we gathered our data. We started with 2 non-structured interviews with school psychologists. I mean, with 2 school psychologists, just to collect how their work, what their work looked like in wartime, what they wanted to highlight, what they wanted to describe. Based on these interviews, we elaborated an online survey. We had a lot of questions there, including some validated measure tools like assessing burnout, assessing the resilience of school psychologists, and so on. But the main questions were these one. So we had 3 open questions, like what psychological responses to the war you observe in children at primary school. Then the next question, the same, but in secondary school, and the third in high school. And after they filled in these narrative responses on the next page, they also had 3 closed questions similar to the previous ones. We provided them with a list of stress reactions elaborated by Young and colleagues, and asked them to mark which symptoms they observe in children at primary school, and then in secondary school, and then in high school. We collected 47 responses. In total, we have 145 schools at Kryvyi Rih, so approximately 100 of psychologists work there, but we collected only 47. And these are some results. First of all, we tried to make a content analysis of their narrative responses. We tried to collect some what categories they mention, and you see that we then grouped them into 4 groups: emotional categories, cognitive, physical, and behavioral. From this data, you may see that in all 3 groups, I mean 3 age groups, all psychologists mentioned emotional responses of children more frequently, but we see some tendency that, for instance, in primary school and secondary school, they had also physical manifestations of their war-related stress, which was not inherent to high school students. And also you can see some dynamics, some tendencies that high school students manifested their stress levels in behavior more frequently. And also I want to highlight a point which was crucial for us, that when in primary school and secondary school, anxiety was most prevalent, like feeling which has no object. You are just in anxiety, but you can't describe what you are afraid of. However, in high school students, they had a specific fear about their future. And we analyzed it in relation to their age, that they wanted to choose their profession, to choose university. And when Russia invaded, all that future was at risk. So they were worried about that a lot. These results are about I mean, on this slide, you can see results about the list of symptoms. And again, you may see that emotional reactions were the most prevalent as observed in all 3 groups and tested by Crossfire test. And the last part of the results is about how school psychological services changed their work to adjust to what they observed. So as you may see, it differed. Some psychologists said that they started to work more in individual form than in group form than usual. But others said the opposite, that they started to work with groups more than individually. About a third said they started to work with student parents more than usual, but about half said that no, they started to work with parents of students less. About a third said they worked with students more, and others that they work with students less, and so on. It also includes school staff. But in general, when we generalized all responses, we saw that there were 3 key points which were inherent to majority. First, that they conduct more individual consultations than usual in general.
Dr. Velykodna, we're out of time, so if you just want to give us like one wrap up with any key points or takeaways.
Yes, these are key points, so you can read. I only want to add that the only number which is not on the screen, but it should be said, that more than a half of school psychologists said they were not prepared to conduct crisis intervention at all. So at the moment of invasion, they were not prepared. And they should simultaneously observe what is going on and adjust to it and learn something, find information, and do all that surviving themselves in wartime. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna now ask for people to put questions in the chat. Any comments or questions? Please feel free to write it in the chat and I will read those out loud. Any specific questions for Dr. Velykodna or comments? Okay. Let me see. All right. So we have a question here that asks, have schools had to close often during this time period?
Thanks for the question. No, the point is that many schools shifted online, but in the wartime, all schools shifted to be shelters. So Kryvyi hosted many citizens of Mariupol and other people from Donetsk, Luhansk region, and psychologists worked and other teachers. They worked the first part of the day online or in person with children, and then they met all that internally displaced people who came to their shelter, and some of them even cooked for these people, and some of them should have to be just people on duty in these shelters at nights to help all these people who had to live in these schools, like at temporary houses.
Thank you. I'm going to leave time for we have time probably for one or two more questions. So are there any efforts to provide crisis and or trauma training to school psychologists now?
Yes, in several weeks and after the Russian invasion, we had the first training free of charge provided by Portuguese Psychological Association and hosted by in Ukraine by the National Psychological Association. And this training was repeated multiple times. Plus, we had lots of trainings focused on work with children and locally at schools and for many people. So the situation changed from that moment. But it was interesting how people deal with this situation with lack of information. But now we have lots of trainings, and some of them are still ongoing. And what we hear from people who were trained, that they need to be retrained every several months. So even people who are trained in crisis intervention and they have practice, so they provide these crisis interventions, they feel that they need to even to attend the same course one more time, just to again to remember it, because when you are living in wartime, your cognitive abilities are always attacked all the time, and that is why to make something really good, you have to put it in the frame again. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Velykodna. I'm going to have a switch over to Dr. Kolisnyk, if you want to go ahead and present and share your screen. Thank you.
Just a moment. I'd like to present you, dear colleagues, our study about university students' mental health in the wartime in Ukraine. It was conducted with the great help of my colleagues from the Association of Psychologists of High School of Ukraine. The survey was conducted using this instrument. So the 5 questionnaires were taken to conduct the survey. Data collection, it was web-based survey. We conducted it during February-March 2023, and we used RedCap platform to gather the result. The sample was a little bit more than 2,500 students. They were from 23 higher educational establishments of Ukraine. You see here the list of the cities of these universities. I should mention that it is all parts of Ukraine: eastern, western, northern, southern, and central part. Some characteristics of our participants: the most students were female, at the age of from 17 till 25. And they are representatives from all academic years, from the first till the 5th and 6th year. And now, as for the results, the first questionnaire is the Hospital Anxiety and Depression Scale, and you see that the level of anxiety, normal anxiety, it's 42% here. According to this questionnaire, depression, 60% of normal level and 17% of abnormal. According to the next questionnaire, back depression inventory, we have 42% of normal. In comparison with this, you see here we have 16. But in the Beck's variant, it is mild mood disturbance, also 25%. So together we have nearly 60. Then Spielberger, it's about anxiety. So let's go back. Let's go back here. We have depression, normal 60%. But according to Spielberger, we have a high level of anxiety, 56%, and trait anxiety, 60% of high anxiety. Then as for the perceived stress, we have 20% of low stress and 17% of high stress. Then we also asked our participants about their psychological well-being, and the majority of them, 94%, suggested that they have low level of psychological well-being. Then also we have one question concerning some physical symptoms. The physical symptoms that we observe speaking about PTSD, for example, and you see that there are 5 figures. And I'd like to point out that only 14% of our respondents said that they have no such symptoms, not listed symptoms, or some other symptoms. So only 14%. Then we try to find some correlation between the levels of anxiety, depression, perceived stress, and well-being, and some characteristics of our sample you see here on the screen. Then very interesting fact. We conducted the similar survey several years ago. It was in 2020. The time we used nearly the same questionnaires. And it was very interesting for us to compare the result and to look at the changes, what happened during this time. In 2020, it was the sample was 725 students, also many higher educational establishments of Ukraine, 16. I should mention that it was during the time of COVID pandemic, so also difficult time for people. And here are the results of comparison. anxiety and depression. According to Hospital Anxiety and Depression Scale, we have some significant differences, and I'm sure we have higher results in 2023. According to the Beck's depression inventory, we see that the difference is not significant. It's a surprise, yes, and it's a question, and it's a task for the further investigation. And then this question about physical symptoms, you see that there is also a significant difference between the answers, and the symptoms are more severe now in 2023. Then it's a question for the future concerning providing the help for the youth, for the university students, for proper planning of psychological care. We asked our participants about the forms of work with psychologists that they prefer to choose, and you observe here the answer. And you observe here also the comparison between 2020 and 2023. Previously, we had the question about the perception of Ukrainians of psychological help, whether they are ready to go to the psychologist or psychotherapist, and so on. And here you can observe the answer. And the conclusion is the majority of students, they prefer offline counseling, not telephone, not offline, not group work, but offline counseling. One-to-one work with psychologists or psychotherapists. But you see also some other types of work that they prefer. Yeah, I think. It's also interesting that it is small figures of participants that are not ready to address their questions, their hardships to psychologists and psychotherapists. So the majority of students, they are ready to go to psychologists or psychotherapists in the case that they need this. It's all from me. Thank you very much for attention and for the possibility to speak to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kolisnyk. So what we'll do is I'm going to open up again the chat if people have questions for Dr. Kolisnyk, and I will also circle back to some of Dr. Velykodna's questions because I know we didn't have much time for Q&A at the start. So if people want to feel free and put in some questions for Dr. Kolisnyk in the chat room. And oh, there we go. Great. And while people are typing, Dr. Kolisnyk, I wanted to understand, so you were saying that most students said that they preferred offline counseling. What does that, when you mean offline counseling, what does that mean specifically?
It means that they would like to speak to the psychologist or psychotherapist one-to-one in the same room, in the same physical room.
Got it. Not virtual or not.
So not online, not virtual conversation, not telephone conversation, but physical presence in the same room.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Dr. Kolisnyk? Okay, so we have one here saying, would you mind sharing the results of the regression again? Are there specific risk and protective factors related to these outcomes?
Specific risk and protective factors. Regression, you mean this,
Yeah, your slide with the...
This regression, just a minute. This one, yeah?
I don't think you have your screen shared.
Oh, really?
We don't see it.
No.
Yep.
Yeah. This one, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And what is the question? About some analysis, yes?
Yes, the question was, are there specific risk and protective factors that are related to these outcomes?
The results is very questionable. Yeah, it should be provided more detailed analysis of them, and we are in the process of this because some contradiction we have here when according to one questionnaire, one instrument, we have one result. According to the other questionnaire, for example, according to depression HADs, we have no correlation with the age, for example, and with the year. But according to back depression, we have this correlation. But as for the age, it is negative correlation. As for the year, it is positive correlation, and we should do some more detailed analysis and find why we have some contradictory results. The same, for example, with anxiety, state rate anxiety. Also, we have this negative correlation with the age, but there is no correlation with the year. And it's also some surprise, yes, and it demands some more analysis. Yeah.
Great, thank you. If you want to stop sharing your screen, Dr. Kolisnyk.
Yes.
Great. We have another question here that it says, what are some challenges that you encountered in data collection that were related to the effects of the war? And I think both of you could probably speak to that. So Dr. Velykodna, you also feel free to answer that.
Challenges conducting the research. I don't know. I had great support of my colleagues. That's why it was easy enough to reach the students, yes, and to spread the information about the research and involve a lot of participants. But I think one of the hardship maybe here is that it was some voluntary participation, and only students who would like to participate, they do it. We don't choose them according to some characteristics, yes. So we think about that maybe students who have some severe symptoms of depression or maybe anxiety, they just didn't participate in the survey. And because of this, we can't observe the real picture, the real situation with these figures. Maybe the real level of depression, the real level of anxiety is higher than I presented here.
Great, thank you. And Dr. Velykodna, I don't know if you want to speak to that as well.
Yes, I also want to add, I was involved in about 5 research, and I can compare that compared to previous years, including the COVID pandemic, we have lower response rates now. So less people are willing to participate in surveys, even when they are conducted remotely in anonymous and so on. And I agree that it can be just a way to defend themselves about reflection. And also, when we are now conducting research, on the first page, we ourselves post some warnings if you are feel you're too traumatized and some questions may trigger you, please don't participate in this study. So we have these problems. And also concerning children's, when we want to directly meet children to conduct any study to assess something, we feel that we need to have a team where one psychologist is a researcher, but we have some practical psychologists who could meet this child if this assessment would provoke some negative states. And currently we just don't have such teams. And also the problem is people are moving suddenly. For instance, we have new missile attacks on Kiev, and people just, they had plans for weekend, but they are rapidly moving. And it is a little simpler to manage. If we are working with adults, we can just do something online, but it is impossible to do with children together something. So like that. Ethical issues and objective reality, which just we have obstacles to collect it. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Velykodna. I have one more question for you, Dr. Kolisnyk. Here, someone asked, it looked like telehealth and podcast information has increased substantially. Is or was there any age-related effects? I have found telehealth to be ineffective with younger kids in my practice.
I should mention here, it is about this, yes. I should mention that in 2023, this question was included, but we had no this question in 2020. That's why we have here 0 2020. So 0, it doesn't mean that none of participants preferred lectures or podcasts, but yeah, we just included it in 2023 because we saw that many young people, they are involved in this, they prefer this, and that's why we added this question.
Thank you. And one last question for you, Dr. Velykodna. So we had a question here that was about if there were any types of interventions that have been most helpful for managing the stress for children and their families.
It is a good question. We did not ask on that moment because our question was, were you educated to conduct crisis interventions? Did you get some strict guidance from the Ministry of Education and Science or some psychological staff under you? And many people said, no, I don't have any. So they were just like alone with doing with all that, unfortunately. And but we asked about their sources of support, what supported them, and support from colleagues was highly valued. Support from colleagues, and as for teachers, teachers also valued very high support of children's parents. So when they felt that there is some team, they can do it together. If I remember clearly, they even had lower levels of burnout when they felt that there is a team of colleagues and parents and some other stuff.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you both, Dr. Kolisnyk and Dr. Velykodna. This was wonderful to hear both of all the amazing work that both of you are doing. I'm putting a link now in the chat for everyone to go back to the main room. So please follow that Zoom link. And again, thank you both so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, we'll begin. So welcome to our breakout group. I'm Ella, and I will be our moderator today. To use our time wisely, we have asked the presenter to introduce each other. We will have 8 minutes for each presenter, and I will raise my hands in Zoom as a reminder when there is 1 minute left. Discussion questions and comments will be done through the chat room following each presenter. I will read the discussion question as they appear in the chat room. about 10 minutes we'll have about 10 minutes to discuss each presentation. And as a reminder, we will record this discussion for future purpose. So now let's begin. Speaker 2 will introduce Speaker 1. Let's welcome Yana Rudiuk to introduce Dr. Yaryna and Anrushko.
Hello to everybody, glad to see you. I'm a little bit nervous. So I would like to introduce Yaryna and Anrushko. Yes, it's Doctor of Philosophy, Associate Professor, Department of Theoretical and Practical Psychology, Lviv Polytechnic National University, visiting scholar, Ednet Bennett Pierce Fermentation Research Center, Penn State University. So the theme is traumatic experiences and Ukrainians' forced migration. Thank you. Please.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. It's a big honor to me. So I am sharing my screen. Do you see it? Okay. So today we're talking about trauma experience of Ukrainians forced migration, and I want to say that today's wartime proves that the term trauma will be in the everyday and scientific lexicon of Ukrainians for a long time, and after the war, in the post-war period, trauma is an event that has a strong impact on a person's mental and of physical state. According to the American classification of mental disorders, trauma is considered in the context of the post-traumatic stress disorder. That is, a person must have certain symptoms. Symptoms of the injury decrease during the first months in some of the victims. The rest of the people develop various types of disorders that are associated with adaptation. So, the Russian invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022 changed the lives of Ukrainians forever. So you see here that numbers have been provided by USA Department of National Security about displaced person in the United States of America. Our interpretation of research program can be described as stages through which the displaced person moves in order to build own resilience. So first, it's functional level. Functional level is adaptation to new social cultural condition, environmental features. Most people who are forced to live in their homes are faced with the need to create new comfortable living conditions for life, such as house, furniture, utilities, and others. When we talk about mental level, mental health care, so it's, of course, this is a stressful person which manifests itself at the psychological and mental levels. And third, spiritual level, the meaning of existence. We can also talk about existential vacuum. When a person has a goal, it adds meaning to he or her lives, gives strength to move forward, act as a support. But everything is based on the feeling of fate in the meaning and content of one's life, because without it, one can get tired of life, or on the contrary, with fate, a person becomes stronger and more courageous. During trials, a person learns her own limits of powerlessness, pain in the context of which wisdom is formed, which becomes the basis for further steps. So our study provided at Bennett Prevention Research Center, Penn State University, And our participants, it's Ukrainians who were first to migrate to United States in the program United for Ukraine. Age for participants, you will see 65 years. Our research still going, so we'll keep eye on it. Our aim to study the psychological condition of Ukrainians during forced migration in order to provide a qualified assessment and form a program for psychological assistance. What we research, we have a lot of scale. Some of them is cultural safety, economical security, physical security, self-satisfaction, and others. Here we are, it's partial results. So as we can see, such indicators stands out among others. It's economical security, it's cultural safety, it's marginalization, and life satisfaction. So threats to economic security, we talk about unemployment, criminalization of the economy, deterioration of the natural environment, growth of diseases, force major circumstances of satisfaction of needs. On the other hand, we talk about the essence of the cultural security of the individual, and its content are aimed at protecting the vital needs of the person, his or her meaning of life. And the marginal is considered as an individual who physically belongs to a certain social group, but emotionally, morally, and mentally is outside the border. And when we talk about satisfaction with life, is determined by goals achieved, difficulties overcome, change occurring in personal and professional life. So what will be next? To gain a deeper understanding of the psychological impact of forced migration and create program to help Ukrainians who have been displaced by wartime. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Anrushko, for this wonderful presentation. And now let's move on to the discussion section. You can type your question in the chat box and I will read them out loud. If it's hard to find the chat function, you can also raise your hand and I can open up the mic. Okay, I see one question. Could Dr. Anrushko share the slide with the message again?
Okay.
And yes, Ms. Rudiuk.
Thank you. I have a question. Can you please tell what the difficulties you had when during making these experiments, during communicating with people? What was the most difficult for you? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions. I want to tell that it was survey first. My study have two stages. So I'm in the first stages. It's a survey. So next stage, it will be an interview with participants who have sensitive answers for some questions, but we're still working on it. So now I am doing my data analysis, and it's as for me, it's more difficult because I'm not math specialist, but I'm doing the best I can. Thank you.
Thank you. And here's another question. What kind of interventions are you finding the most successful?
I think that the most successful will be to talk with person, to have interview, and to have like contact with person. Clearly, because I'm Ukrainian, the Ukrainians will be on the same page.
And are those 511 Ukrainian all over the United States?
Exactly. They are still here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, I see one. So I'm curious where geographically the participants ended up within the United States, and if the data shows that factor has any impact on the experience of acculturation.
Thank you. It's very interesting questions. So geographically, sorry for it's hard to. Ukrainians is located in different states. It's Florida, it's New York, it's Pennsylvania, so it's different states. Doesn't matter where they're living. And what about experience of acculturation? So yeah, we are in our study. We talk about acculturation process, but we must admit that now we see process of marginalization more than others. So it's talk about us too. That it still is more than 1 year they're here. So like feeling economical security and social safety, it's one hand. But when we talk about culture, when we talk about language and everything like that, most of them, I read the answers talk that it's difficult and it's hard to be there. Most of them, like % want to return, want to come back.
Okay, so the next question, what will the data be used for? What are some hopes for your team?
Excuse me, can you repeat?
Yes, what will the data be used for? What are some hopes for your team?
As I said, like main goal is help them to adapt to new conditions. So we want to create program which provide them not only like psychological program, because a lot of stuff of it, but in social, like I said, functional level, in the mental care level, not only psychological, psychiatric, but physician therapist. So it's very important, and it's as in my experience, it's different as in Ukraine, because I'm here, so I can I feel it on myself how it is, and also like spiritual level, to be more culture and to save your itself.
Okay, so we'll have time for, I will try to finish the rest of the question. We'll have 3 more minutes. And the next question is, what factors may influence who was able to come to the United States? Would they be higher income or higher educational level? Was age a factor?
We just started our data analysis. It's very interesting. I want to say that I knew that it would be something like that. So they're higher educational, most of them. So they're professional, not school or like people with high education, ending of university. Most of them, 18%.
And another question, were there significant differences between people of different ages in terms of cultural integration?
Nice questions. I want to say that also we will check in later. Yes, just started. I can't. It will be just my imagination if I said, because I have some hypothesis about this that, but I'm not tell you now.
Okay. Next question. I'm curious where geographically the participant ended up within the United States, and if the data shows that factor has any impact on the experience of acculturation. Wait, this is a repeated question. So we don't have the last question. Do you think that there is a difference between Ukrainian who came to the United States versus one who fled to countries in Europe? And if so, does that affect acculturation?
Probably, yeah. Because I did my pilot version of study, and it was like not official, but I want to say that Ukrainian refugees, they're feeling more close to home. So they're not feeling so distant. It's first what I have to admit. But now how to say, because I'm still working.
Okay, and this is an ongoing discussion, but due to time limit, we'll move on to the next presenter. And so let's now welcome Yana Rudiuk and Dr. Anrushko. Could you please introduce Ms. Yana Rudiuk?
It was a big pleasure. I would like to introduce Yana Rudiuk. She has a master's degree of psychology. She is member of World Association for Positive Psychotherapy. She is member of Ukrainian Association of Positive Psychotherapy and member of National Psychology Association. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Hello to everybody one more time. So I would like to share my demonstration. One moment. Where it is? Here it is. One second. I think that maybe I have some technical problems. Maybe demonstration. Yeah. Do you see it? It's okay.
One second. I think it's loading.
Maybe I will ask you to help me.
Okay, I see it.
It's okay. Okay, so thank you very much. So the idea of my decisions of my communication with people was psychological state of Ukrainians who were forced to leave. Was to check how people feel at the moment when the full invasion started, and how do they feel after this long time. And there are different states, there are different about these people. So the main people with whom I was communicating, it was women, because only women could go of the country, because one should stay. I was talking 50 women, they took part in this, mostly only they could leave. The age of the interviews was from 20 to 45 years. % of these people, of interviewees, are people who work or have their own high education. They had good life in Ukraine when they should have gone out of their houses. An important point is that all interviewers had a stable before the war and a stable level of income and comfort of life. I studied the dynamics of changes in people's conditions and as of today. So you can see how old are these women, and this all they have an opportunity to have a good life in Ukraine and feel like home in other countries because they used to. And also I wanted to check the feelings at the moment, and the main feeling, as you see, it was fear, and also it was anger. When I was talking to them, it was a lot of pain in this communication, because people had to do this. They didn't want to do this, but they had. So fear, anger, obscurity at the moment when they should have gone. And also I wanted to check their own characteristics that help them to go out of the country, to make these decisions, to start doing this. And most of them were feeling fear for their relatives, and also they were hoping for the best, that life will be better, that they will still be alive. Also, they had support of their families, responsibility like they had in life that they must do something, they must check what they're doing, determination and flexibility to changes. It is very good part of our people, or like characteristics like resilience. I think you know it. And all Ukrainians, I think, can make master classes how to check and how to improve own resilience. Also, I checked the psychological state of Ukrainians who left the dynamics and today feeling. So a lot of people had fear, hate, insult, habit, emotional disconnection, and adoption. So as you see, like it was a long way and a lot of feelings, like macro trauma, yes, that our women had to go through. And now a lot of people are on the stage of adoption. They're continuing to live, they're continuing to grow their children, to work, because there is no chance. They only can do this in other countries, in Poland, in Germany, European countries. There are a lot of people in these countries and also in the USA. So they just, the main idea that they had to move on. So that's what they are doing. And tools that help to endure this is the life psychologist, buying friends, work, children, faith, end of war, and plans for the future. And when I was talking to these women, most of them told that they're still going to Ukraine for 1 month or maybe 1-2 weeks, because even if it's dangerous, even if it's not so safety, they just want to feel they're at home for some short period of time. And it's very important. It gives the power to move on and to live more. And the important part about it would be better that they would start working with psychologists before the war, and due to this, they could feel better when the war started. They could be more stable, something like, or going through this hard period, like more safety if they work with psychologists at this period. Psychological state today of these women is adoption, also sadness, stability, and adoption. So adaptation, as you see, it's a very high level. People trying to move on, and that's, I think that when I was talking to them about this question, most of them just said that they had to do this, that they just, it's not their wish, it's a new reality. That's why it's happening. And when I was there was also one short moment that I was asking them what they should do in some other, they had such an opportunity, like to change something when the war started. How would they do? What would they do in another way? And they told me that they would maybe choose more with the mentality which is more to Ukrainians, like to communicate more in more easy way, or they would go in some western regions of Ukraine, just like to stay in Ukraine, but to be in more place. It's like, because there is such a lucky moment that in Western Ukraine there is not so dangerous like in other parts, but at this moment of time, but it's not, think about it as we could wish this. So I think that very good, like that I will continue communicating with people to check some information, to check these feelings, to understand what, not what to do if the next war will start, but what new characteristics, what in which way psyche of Ukrainians work and how it becomes better. So something like that. Thank you very much, and I'm ready for questions.
Thank you for this wonderful presentation. And so if you have questions, type them in the chat box and I will read them out loud. One question is how long your research was?
My research was only 50 women.
Sorry, I think there's an internet cutoff. Can you repeat it again?
Yeah, of course. Sorry for my internet. Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. It was during 1 month.
Okay, and another question. Samantha says, thank you for the presentation. And can you clarify what I meant by adoption?
Sorry, I'm not sure that I understood right. Can you please repeat the question?
Mm-hmm. Can you clarify what it means by adoption?
Oh, okay, understand. Adoption, when I was talking about these characteristics, adoption is like being in this moment, like to continue living and just to understand that it's a new part of life, new part of this period, like to continue, to not to stop.
Thank you. Okay, another question. How receptive are United States citizens to the refugees?
Okay. As I know that people in USA.
Yes, I think a little bit internet disconnection. I'll repeat the question again. How receptive are United States citizens to the refugees?
As I know, the citizens are very receptive to Ukrainians, and thank you very much for this help and for everything you are doing for our people. It's like very great work, and thank you very much for this.
Okay, and the next question, can you elaborate on the differences between adoption and adaptation, maybe with an example? Okay, I think there's an internet disconnection.
Do you hear me?
Okay, can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm very sorry for my internet. I don't know what I can do with it.
That's totally fine. I will read the question again, and if there's another discussion, I'll let you know. So can you elaborate on the difference between adoption and adaptation, maybe with an example?
Okay, I will try. So the difference that I understood from communication with these women is that adoption is like the difference is in the high of their feelings, like in the way how they appreciate that. Adaptation is like you used to do this and you are doing this. Okay, you just no emotion, just working. And adoption is like when you're when it's part of you and you are okay with this, it's more quite an emotional level. When you just start moving on, it's not so hard step for you to adopt as to adapt, something like that, if it's understandable. Thank you.
Okay, and 1 second. Okay, another question. I'm working with displaced Ukrainians. Do you provide any training support groups that I can refer them to?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I think it's a very good idea, and I know that my colleagues doing some trainings, so they're communicating. And as for me, I'm working with people, and sometimes I'm working as a volunteer, as psychologist, and that's how I'm in this process. And a lot of also many psychologists in Ukraine, they have a lot of information work with people. We tell them how to be with their feelings. We try to communicate to them. We ask their questions and try and like to give more information to understand what's going on, what's going inside of them. Because sometimes people just saying, "Oh, I'm bad. I'm feeling bad." What does it mean, bad? You must better understand what's going on, and then it becomes better. So it's part of our work.
Okay, and the next question is, what will be the future suggestion based on your research?
I think that I'm thinking about this, and my suggestions at this moment are maybe also to make some trainings or like methodological books about the situation, how our people feel today, and how to help yourself to adopt and to adapt new changes that can happen to you in future, something like that.
Thank you. We'll have 1 to 2 minutes left, so maybe we'll have. Okay, I see another question.
I want to add something.
Yeah,
Sorry. Because I saw this question. I think it was a question for me because it was earlier when I have talked. So about provide any training support groups. Here I'm going to do this. So it will be like next step. And question was about, do you believe it is a problem for lots of Ukrainians, recent refugees to adapt to new environment because many of them want to come back home? So I want to tell that some part of them will live here. Some will go back. I don't know how many people will go back, how many return. So it's only like hypothesis. We'll see how it be, but here is a lot of, it's a big community Ukrainians in the United States. So they have support only in a big city, but when you're in a smaller town, so you need more support. They have not it in the small town. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will have time for the last comment, and I will read it. I'm working with a 20-year-old woman whose family left Ukraine the day the Russian invaded. She has made a wonderful adaptation, but understandably, she breaks down crying, having nightmares, panic about her people in Ukraine and her country. How are you working with people about their reactions?
Sorry, it's a question to me or to Yaryna?
I think it's for you, Ms. Rudiuk.
Okay, thank you very much. So if I understand correct, that how we are working with the feelings in like similar situations that you have told?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how we're working with feelings, like simple answer is we are working with feelings. We are trying to name these feelings, like to give the person an opportunity to tell about this, to feel this, like to let it go. And then we're becoming to like some functional part, what we can do with these feelings, what you want to do with these feelings and what we can do with these feelings. First step is to let these feelings go.
Okay. And so thank you, Dr. Anrushko and Ms. Yana Rudiuk for this presentation and everyone's contribution to the discussion. We appreciated all you have to say. And this is ongoing conversations. So now let's go back to the main room and we will continue our discussion. And please return to the main room using the link that you joined. It should be in your email when you register for the seminar. So yeah.
All right, so welcome to breakout room 3. You should be in challenges and psychological practice. If you're not, that's all right. Welcome. You're gonna have a great time anyway. We're gonna go ahead and get started just because we are on a little bit of a time constraint. We wanna make sure that the speakers have plenty of time to get through their material. I'm Sydney. I'm going to be moderating this breakout room. We definitely encourage you to ask questions. That'll be done through the chat at the bottom. We'll do that after the presentation just to give the speaker their full time. And to use our time wisely, we'll just jump right in. We'll have the first speaker go ahead and get set up. And the second speaker, if you would like to introduce your colleague, that would be wonderful. So go ahead and unmute yourself and you can turn on that presentation. They may not be in yet. see. If you are a speaker, because of the constraints on viewership, so we can't see your video or hear you, go ahead and send us a message so that we can unmute you and let you be seen. Maybe through the chat. Yay. Olha, hello.
I can't open my video.
All right, let's go ahead and give you permission to do that.
Hello, dear colleagues. I want to present you of our study. Can I open my presentation?
Please do. Are you able to?
One moment, please. One moment, please. I try open. Can you look?
Yes, beautiful.
Yes?
We can see it.
Ah, super.
Right ahead. And Olha, I'll give you a little hand raise or I'll message you right before we're about to go into questioning for time, okay?
Okay, I have 8 minutes. True.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. Go ahead and start, please.
Okay. The purpose of our research was the theoretical justification and empirical research of the peculiarities of emotional styles in persons with traumatic experience. The conducted theoretical review of scientists' position on the mentioned problem allowed to provide and others definition of traumatic experience and emotional styles. Traumatic experience is the onset with its destructive force posing a threat to a person's physical integrity, his life, leads to the exhaustion of the psyche. Emotional style are an individual characteristic of emotional reaction and experience of a person. The introspective nature of emotional styles is also manifested in the ways emotion influence cognitive operation with mental image and object of reality. Oops. A remote survey was conducted using Google Forms, which was deemed minimally sufficient for testing the proposed hypothesis and valid for the research sample. A total of 223 individuals registered to participate in the study and 201 individuals submitted complete questionnaires. The research sample consisted of citizens of Ukraine, 201 ranging in age from 18 to 72 years old, average age 30.1. Among them, 41 were male and 160 were female. There were no respondents of average gender identified. Respondents in both groups experienced traumatic events with the following being the most common: rape, sexual assault, physical violence, childhood neglect, childhood abuse, life-threatening situation. There were two groups of participants identified. Group 1, individuals with traumatic experience and predictor of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. They had an average age of 28 years, statistically significantly younger, were unmarried or in a civilian marriage, and did not have children. Group 2, individuals with traumatic experience without predictors of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. They had an average age of 34 years, were married or had a divorced status, and had one child.
The future of individual psychological quality of individuals. It is worth noting that the statistically significant difference were found between the two groups of participants in terms of tolerance for ambiguity, attributional style, and neurotic adaptive mechanism of psychological defense. Therefore, we can conclude that individual psychological qualities of individuals with traumatic experience, as investigated in this study, exist independently of presence of absence of predictors of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. In our study, we understand that cognitive operations are subordinate to emotions and are controlled by them. In our study, the term affect is used similarly to the English term affect to denote an emotional state or emotional response in general, as opposite to the narrow concept, the heat of passion, which refers to a short and intense emotion. Statistically significant differences have been identified in the indicators of individuals from group 1 compared to individuals from group 2. Destructive strategies of cognitive emotion regulation, a tendency to think about the negative consequences of the event that occurred and to blame others to the experience. Adaptive strategies of cognitive emotion regulation, a tendency to think about the next step regarding what happened and to search for a positive meaning with the purpose of personal growth or acquiring new experience. There was a higher expression of negative affect. There was a lower expression of positive affect. In the emotional attitude, a sense of loneliness predominates with a prevalence of negative emotional experience, alienation, and a lack of understanding from the surrounding. Insufficiency in communication and close relationship, difficulties in establishing new connection and friendly bonds, sense of purposelessness, feeling of insignificance, and lack of importance of events occurring in one's life, mild dissatisfaction due to the effort invested in work, education, and family matters. Hostile conflict, loss of self-control, or feelings of indignation, anger in situation where one is under pressure and subjected to the imposition of opinions, especially when there is opportunity to resist to expression dissatisfaction. A pronounced discrepancy between the real and ideal self, hopelessness, a pessimistic perception of reality, oneself, and future project, feelings of loss of important opportunity in the past, and the inability to regain what has been lost, doubts about the necessity of continue the struggle to achieve life important goals. Harmlessness, a sense of harmlessness both in a physical and psychological sense, detachment from events happening around, insufficient engagement in work, interaction with others, and family relationships, freedom of choice, a sense of limitation in choosing different options and opportunities that would align with desire and needs, difficulties in expressing oneself sufficiently to always be oneself in interaction with people, especially those in higher position with higher rank. Difficulty in the necessity to defend oneself, assert one's right to personal desire and thoughts, and usage of the right to protest against violence. Freedom of will, a sense of limitation in the ability to make choices independently of certain circumstances. Inclination to see oneself as a person who needs, seeks, and accepts a stage in solving personal life problem. Explanation of one's success in life as lack of the will of others. That's all. Thank you very much for your listening. If you have any questions, please write me in chat.
Yes. Actually, we're gonna have them put it in the little chat, the Q&A, if you guys have that. But thank you, Olha. That was so enlightening and beautiful. So thank you for that. If you have any questions, thank you. Please feel free to ask them now. We'll take just a minute or two.
Yes, I closed my presentation. And
Olha, while we're waiting for any questions to come in, do you have anything that you'd like to add? Any thoughts on where we can go in the future with the practice or helping people?
I think I need to say about Viktoriia now.
Okay. If we have no questions, we'll go right into our second speaker. We have Miss Viktoriia. Let's see. Here.
Viktoriia.
Awesome. Viktoriia, do you want to go ahead and turn on your screen? And we can get started with your presentation.
Oh my God. Viktoriia say I cannot start my video.
Yeah, we're gonna fix that right now.
Oh, I can speak. That's great, but I can start my video because it's forbidden by host. Yes.
Okay.
Wow.
Awesome. Welcome.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Sorry for me not able to make it in time because I was a lead trainer for one of the big Ukrainian project. It's Aterm project, Reconciliation Trauma Memory. And we just finished our first training day for Ukrainian practitioners. And sorry.
You're not late at all. You're right on time. So go ahead and start whenever you feel good to.
Okay, Olha, I heard that you wanted to present me. Yes, I am ready to be presented then. I can do it by myself. No worries.
Oh, how did you hear that?
Viktoriia, I'm sorry, I don't understand what I do for you.
Yes. Olha, do you have were you going to introduce Viktoriia, or would you like her to do so?
I can do it by myself. No.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you, Olha.
Okay, let's start. Hello, everyone. I'm Viktoriia Gorbunova. I'm a psychologist by background, Doctor of Science, and now as about my professional position, I am a Marie Curie Fellow at the University of Luxembourg, postdoctoral fellow. My presentation will not be much about like my own research. I want to give you more overview of the mental health research actually on Ukrainian refugees. And there are not many data, but I tried to gather it for you most available data and try to generate them and make some conclusion. And also, of course, there will be a part of my own observation and also observation from teams which I am included, which I am part of. Mental health, and sorry for such a distorted actually speech and that I am not very consistent and coherent. It's because I, through all the day today, I was speaking and speaking and speaking, and my language was Ukrainian because I delivered to our Ukrainian mental health professional RTM training. Then I'm a little bit overwhelmed, a little bit in a hurry, and then sorry, and please be patient and let me calm myself and try to actually share my thoughts with you. What I want to share, first of all, it's about Ukrainian experience. I want to share with you some general statistic and demography, tell a little bit about family status of our Ukrainian refugees who are now staying abroad, about their intention to stay or to come back to Ukraine. Also, I want to share with you Ukrainian temporary protected persons profile, who are those people, what they intend to do, and actually how their daily lives, how their daily life goes. Also, I want to tell you a little bit more about war-related mental health challenges and issues, and also about psychological situation in which actually those who are abroad are in. If we will speak about general data, general numbers and statistic, we can see that more than 8 million of Ukrainians are now staying abroad, and this number is not stable because a lot of people trying to come back and then they again go to the host country because of instability of situation and different problem with electricity, shortcuts, or with nuclear threats, and so far, so on. But what's important that only near 5 million of Ukrainians abroad applied for the protection schemes which are offered by different countries. What does it mean in actually understanding and in picturing the portrait of Ukrainian refugee? It means that people don't want to be abandoned for any country. People want to actually work. They want to have some sufficient money to actually live, to survive, and also to donate and to help his own country. A lot of us consider actually this protection status, it's a kind of miserable things because we don't want actually to be named refugees, because we want to live in our own country. That's why a lot of people intend to come home, and also it's connected with different problem. I mean, acculturational problem, socializational problems in different countries. Often our people even don't want to learn foreign languages because for them it's just temporary staying abroad. They are sure that they will come home and will build their lives on their own territory. If we will speak about demography, all the statistic, it's from UNHCR statistic. It was a huge, actually, sociological research, data gaining research, and now we have a lot of data which is interesting to consider and to discuss. Then if we will talk about demography, what's interesting is that you can see that mostly, I guess that it's half of our people have university education, then it's higher education. It's also sufficient part of Ukrainians have vocational education. And it's also is quite untypical for refugee portraits, because Ukrainians, they are like highly educated and they actually want to work to do what their vocation actually keeps saying them. As about gender issue, we have, and it's like it's because of our martial law mostly, that biggest part of actually Ukrainians abroad, they are female. Males are mostly children, and you can see the actually age of also distribution for this parameter. What else interesting? Because it's before leaving Ukraine, sufficient part of Ukrainian were employed, that everyone had a job, had a earning for living. What is interesting also that 23% of Ukrainians already visited Ukraine, and not only one time. People are staying abroad, but they want to, and they do it. They come back and they visit their relatives who stay back, their husband actually, because our martial law forbids our men to cross the borders. That's why a lot of women with children, and we even have now such kind of family reunion tourism, when our people want to come home to see a close one, and only then, and mostly because of all this hardship, they forced actually to go back to the host country. Also, 60% of Ukrainians abroad have been already displayed before. I mean, internally displayed, because this war didn't start. Now we are only talking about full-scale invasion, because this war is already at place a long time. When we are talking about family, you can see that 78% of Ukrainians, they are separated from their family members. And reasons for this, first of all, is our military, our martial law. And of course, a lot of Ukrainians, they just don't want to leave Ukraine despite the threats, despite the daily threats, and despite all the danger they faced. They don't want to leave their places of residence because it is their only home. A lot of Ukrainians traveling with a close family, but also some of them are traveling with unrelated children. And a lot of, for example, our militaries, our soldiers who are now at service, they ask their friends to travel abroad and to stay in hot countries with their children. It's kind of mandate to take care about their children. About intentions to stay. A large majority of respondents reported that they want to stay in their current host country in nearest future. But those intentions, they are not about long staying. It's about intention to come back home when it will be safe, and you can see those reasons for this short staying. No one knows how long will be this short staying, but the reason to stay is safety, family ties, employment, also procedure of asylum, and other reasons. Then if you want a picture for yourself, the portrait of Ukrainian person abroad who are now abroad, you can see that they are mostly women and they are mostly children. Also, you like average amount of children, it's 2. Those people are mostly employed in Ukraine. In half of cases, Ukrainians who are staying abroad, they are still working in Ukraine. They have their remote jobs in Ukraine, and often they combine job in host country and their job in Ukraine. It's very hard, but it gives opportunity to earn more money and to be able to donate and to support Ukrainian actually armies and those relatives who are staying in Ukraine without actually possibility to have sufficient job. I mean, those who are close to the fight line. Also, a lot of people now are staying in social, they actually have social housing, and it's also not easy because a lot of people back in Ukraine, they had their own apartments with separate room for every family member, and now it's kind of very complicated for a lot of Ukrainians to stay in social apartments where often whole family should share one or two room for actually their daily accommodation. Yes, I'm running out of time because I'm not aware about my time limits.
That's okay. I'm going to give you 1 minute-ish if you want to wrap it up a little bit.
Okay. Then I will wrap it up.
Thank you.
And I only, it was only beginning. Okay, sorry. About mental health status, just to what's going on to you to understand it's more clear. You can see that in 73% of cases, mental health of Ukrainians is actually worsened because of the war. But what interesting, only 16% of Ukrainians thought in total that they need mental health support and counseling. What else I am able to share with you? It's about, maybe it will be interesting for you just to see. Yeah, I want to share this with you. Related experience, and it will be the end of my presentations. You can see that most traumatic events which now are faced by Ukrainians is being nearby active military combat, it's evacuation, it's mental health problems, war-related mental health problems, it's loss of job, it's loss of house, it's a loss of property, loss of a close person, mental health problem of a close persons which were actually pushed by the war events, physical health problem, being under occupation, physical health problem of close person, participation in a combat, and being captive. And I guess you can see how not easy it is. And now it's time for the questions, but I don't know. Yeah, I want to share much more with you, but
Thank you, Viktoriia. We know we're so sorry for the short time constraint. If you want to maybe pick 1 or 2 more things to share, that would be all right. And while you're doing that, if any of you have comments or questions that you'd like to ask Viktoriia or Olha, please feel free to put them in the chat now. Otherwise, I'm going to let Viktoriia continue with her presentation because there's a lot of beautiful content here. So keep going, Viktoriia, and I'll give you a nudge when someone is ready for you or Olha.
Okay, maybe it's important to describe psychological situation for Ukrainians abroad. I guess that you spotted that I tried to avoid word refugees and try to name us Ukrainians abroad or temporary persons with temporary protected status. What actually impacts mental health of Ukrainians abroad? First of all, this pre-migratory exposure to trauma, violence, oppressions, and you just solve the list of those traumatic situations which Ukrainians went through. Then it's traumatized path to the country of destination. A lot of people tried to escape and tried to reach the host country in very, very, a hard way. It was without possibility to flight. It was with change on flight and office, and often also people faced those evacuational trains, for example, which were overcrowded with without any possibility even to sleep there. And then it will long way through all the social services and through hands of volunteers and so far, so on. Also, post-migration stressor exposure, all the social determinism needs to be acculturated, and an ability actually to acculturate because of lack of language and knowledge. And also when people just don't know how to utilize actually all these social services, how to have access to some different kind of services. And also one of separate issue is accessibility of mental health and psychological support services and in the host countries. We face a lot of barriers. First of all, language, then a lot of barriers which are, I would say, cultural barriers, and also stigma barriers, and a lot of them. Okay, my second attempt to wrap up.
Thank you so much, Viktoriia and Olha. I'm going to go ahead and let everyone come in. That was beautiful. Thank you both. Does anybody have questions or comments? We don't see any at this moment, but I'll give you a minute or two.
Then I will have third attempt to.
No, this is great. Let me see. We have about a minute left. I guess I'll go ahead and just ask a question myself for both of you. Can both of you hear me all right? Yes? Okay. Maybe for those out there that are listening, how can someone who is not affected by war trauma and most sensitively reach out or actively show support for those that are? And some of us that are not maybe in the mental health provider role, maybe more as friends, or maybe both. What are your thoughts on this?
You are thinking about Ukrainians who are not affected by some mental health issue. Yeah, my presentation was mostly about trauma, but of course there is a phenomenon as post-traumatic growth, and also community support, and different kind of actually supportive things. And I guess that we Ukrainians, yes, we tried, and it also about Ukrainians abroad, they tried to create a kind of communities to support, and also to make networking, and also to collaborate, and to be together to find a decent job. And also a lot of people tried to make something like even little therapeutic groups without knowing that they are therapeutic, for example, for women who are now separated with their husband. And also the important thing is participating in different kind of patriotic events, for example, different march on support to Ukrainians, or a march on support some governmental decision from host country when they are staying. But if we will talk about, kind of a personal person-to-person support, what is important is just to listen and to create this space for other person to be heard. And yes, to have this possibility to share worries, because we are very careful with each other. We are afraid to make, actually to create this pain, and because of this we try to keep by ourselves some painful moments. But it's important, if you have capacity to listen and to bear actually this pain, then let just other person to speak and be free in her or his speaking, to share worries, pains, fears, everything actually. Yeah, I guess it's the most important issue, to be open and to be ready to listen. But you should do it only if you actually have capacity for it. I mean, your mental capacity.
Definitely.
Yes, from my side, Olga. I don't know.
Of course, yeah. Olha, do you have anything to add to that? How can people that are maybe not involved in the trauma help those and most empathically be there for people who are?
I won't say what you can see in our research is that not all people who have had a traumatic experience have mental health consensus, and I think that's a good thing. We have hope. We have hope people will be healthy, psychological healthy.
Yeah, I guess we have a lot of protective factors, you know, which really protect us from PTSD. And we are aware about statistics. We understand that only 30% of people who will face trauma exposure will have actually trauma symptoms. But also there are a lot of protective factors. We are very strong as a community, and we have this mutual support. And also, I guess our sense of humor is one of the salvational things, because if you will just go through our social webs, you will see how many jokes and how many this support, this power of humor are among Ukrainian. We are trying to create different, you know, funny pictures. And of course, we are often not very kind to our enemies, but it's also help us to, you know, diminish them and to feel how actually we are together and how we are supportive to each other. Yes, and also thank you for all the work and participation in this our support, because I guess that this word support is one of the, you know, biggest thing, because we are not alone. We can feel that we are on the light side, you know, that right is with us and democracy with us, and actually decent values are also with us. And thank you for being with us, because staying with Ukrainian, it means that you are fighting with us. You are not support victims, you support fighters. And I want to everyone to know it. Yeah. I can hear you, you're muted.
I said that was beautifully said on both parts. A wonderful reminder, Olha. Thank you, both of you, for your wonderful content. I'm going to go ahead and bring all of our participants back into the main room. It is time. Yes, William gave a nice clap. Thank you for your time. We will see everyone back in the original link that you were sent, or my co-host here, Faith, might be able to send a new link. If that one doesn't work, go back to the original. All right, everyone, we'll see you in the original room. Goodbye now. We'll give you just a couple minutes for that. Thank you, Viktoriia. Thank you, Olha, once again.
Thank you.
Okay, in the interest of time, I just figured we would get started and maybe some folks will trickle in a little bit later. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Breakout Room 4. This is a space on psychological disorders in the context of war. My name is Daniel. I'll be our moderator for the sake of time. So to use our time wisely, we've asked our presenters to introduce one another. Discussion questions and comments will be done through the chat function following each presenter. I will read the discussion questions as they appear in the chat. We'll have about 10 minutes to discuss following each presentation. For our speakers, I'm sorry in advance, but I will use the raised hand function through Zoom, and I'll pop up at the corner of your screen when you have roughly a minute left to present. At the end of our time, I'll put the link to the large group meeting in the chat so folks can rejoin the group, the larger group for a broader discussion of all the content from today. So with that said, I am going to now turn it over to Anna Hrubaia to introduce our first presenter, Svitlana Bolman.
Hi, Daniel. Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Let me introduce my colleague, Svitlana Bolman, Master of Psychology, National Health Division. Please, Svitlana.
Hello. Hi everyone. Nice to be here with you. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Anna. I will share my screen right now, and please wave or say if you see the presentation.
We see it.
Yeah, you see. Okay. Thank you very much. So I can start. One more time, thank you for your interest and for this opportunity to Ukrainian psychologists and researchers to show some interesting and important data that we have, yes, and study that we have. So I want to present you results of study about mental health of forcibly displaced Ukrainian people. And this study was designed as an online survey arranged in the 12 months after the start of the new invasion, as a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and includes evaluation of stress intensity with a perceived stress scale, anxiety with GAD-7 scale, and symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder with PSL-5. The sample size was large even for Ukraine, is 3,173 respondents, and we made from them 3 groups. Yes, NDP, it is not displaced persons, yes, that Ukrainians that do not leave Ukraine for the whole part of war, and they live in their cities and their homes. Also, it's internally displaced persons, the person who displaced within Ukraine, and refugees that left Ukraine, and most of them live in the Europe countries. And to evaluate the current mental health of the studied groups in general, we calculated the percentage of the respondents who reached a moderate or severe level of at least one of measured variables. So it's the sum data for our 3 scales, and we see that only 7.2% of the respondents reported no or mild stress, anxiety, and PTSD level. In all respondents, yes, had mental health issues and that shown by one or more variable. And as you can see, among non-displaced person, percentage of persons that have some issues is smaller, and it is significantly smaller than in ADPs and refugees. And so we have more detailed information about perceived stress. And as you can see on this figure, representatives of all groups showed high levels of stress. But also, as you can see, NDPs have a bigger part with low stress, a bigger part with moderate stress, and less part with high perceived stress. And also that the perceived stress prevalence differed significantly among representatives of the 3 groups. And okay, let's go to anxiety level. And here we can see the same picture. Yes, that the minimum anxiety and mild anxiety levels are bigger in NDPs, and moderate anxiety and severe anxiety are bigger in IDPs and refugees. And also anxiety levels also differed significantly between the three study groups, and reflecting the highest level within the group of refugees. And about PTSD symptoms, yes, we used PTSD criterion, yes, for criterion of DSM-5 to understand how many people, how many respondents have PTSD symptoms and how many doesn't have them. And so we see that more than half of our respondents have PTSD symptoms, and this is awful numbers for Ukraine, yes, and for the whole world. But also we see that people that was forcibly displaced, their situation is bad as for NDPs, yes. And a group comparison also showed that the refugees had significantly higher and the NDPs significantly lower anxiety than the IDPs. And so our main conclusions that the current results show that the lowest stress, anxiety, and PTSD severity was observed among NDPs, and with significantly higher levels among IDPs and the highest among refugees. And Ukrainian people who can stay at home during wartime had significantly lower levels of stress, anxiety, and PTSD compared to those who were forced to flee to other areas. And also I can say that being forcibly displaced from the previous living area and especially entering a new cultural environment significantly contributes to the mental health issues caused by war exposure. And I want to say in 1 minute that about the team that worked on this study. Yes, Oleh was the designer and the initiator of this study, and then Mariana Velykodna and me contributed to the data processing and psychological and diagnostic expertise to the results. Thank you for your attention and time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bolman. I'd like now to take the opportunity to open up for questions. If folks want to use the chat function to type out some questions, then I will read them aloud for everyone.
Okay, shall I stop sharing the screen or?
I suppose you can, if folks have more specific questions like about your findings, then you can feel free to reshare it. But well, while we wait for folks to type out some stuff, I'm curious about, I suppose, also your role as a researcher, and I suppose just to speak more about your experience. There was an article published by the American Psychological Association last year that spoke to the role of disinformation online in the context of war more broadly, but also in Ukraine specifically in this context. I have to wonder about your own work as a researcher and what your thoughts are on doing research on the psychological effects of war, but also in the context of psychological warfare itself. I suppose this is also a question that can go for you, Ms. Hrubaia, as well, if you would care to speak on it.
Okay, thank you. If I understand correctly, you want to know our experience of researchers in the wartime.
Yeah, I think in the context of disinformation and also misinformation, I think it maybe also it's of interest, at least to me.
For myself, I can say that I stay in Kiev the whole time of war, and it is very interesting experience. I don't want to leave it twice time, but we have. And I want to say that doing research through this time, it was the most wonderful coping mechanism that I have. Yes, because we can do something for other people. We can do something useful, and we can not feel ourselves useless if we can not go to our force for our army, yes, and something like that. And so I am very glad to work this time. And also I want to say that opportunities for publishing and for being heard for Ukrainians are great nowadays. So it is wonderful to use this chance and to say a lot of that we can. So it is very good experience for me. Thank you for your question.
Of course. We have one question in the chat, or a couple of questions. I'm wondering if you have any hypotheses about how the presentation of symptoms may change for each group over time.
Yeah, thank you. It is a very interesting question. We wanted to redo our survey, yes, in a few months, and so we can have data in a few months, and we can really see. But for hypothesis, I think that we can have one more problem when people, refugees and the internal displaced people who would return home, they would have other significant problems, and I propose that their mental issues will be they had a lot of mental issues even when they return to their homes, because the hard experience that they have, I think it will be hard for them not to think that they were not here and that they have there some another problems that people that are not displaced from Ukraine have, and we need we need a lot of psychologists and a lot of time to meet these two problems. People that was in during the war in Ukraine, and people who didn't they wasn't in Ukraine, yes, and we have different experience, and so it may be, for me, it will be the biggest problem.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bolman. I see that there are other questions in the chat. For the sake of time, though, I would like to make sure that we get to our second speaker in this room, and then we can leave maybe more time at the end before we have to rejoin the larger group. So I see the questions. I unfortunately need to make sure that we also stay on schedule. So then I'll ask Ms. Bolman to introduce our second speaker, Anna Hrubaia.
Yes, of course. So I want to introduce Anna Hrubaia, Master of Psychology, and one from Mental Health Division from NPR, Ukraine.
Svitlana, thank you so much. And thank you very much for your presentation and data collected. It's very valuable for all of us. So let me share my screen and please let me know if you can see my screen and you can see my slides. Yes?
Yes, we see them.
Right. So I would like to talk about the impact of war in Ukraine, in particular disorders and acute stress disorders of Ukrainian women. And on this slide, you may see the brief outcome of the study which has been conducted by me. So the key aim was to define the common mental disorders, depression in particular, and also the screen individuals for PTSD level. The methods which have been used were questionnaire and online interview, PHQ-9 for depression, and PTSD checklist DSM-5, PCL-5. The cohort was, of course, comparing to Svitlana's study, is very small, but still 52 respondents at the age of from 27 to 45, and there were two groups. The first group is women who temporarily stay abroad.
Anna, sorry to interrupt you, but I can see only your first slide. If you want to, sorry.
Yes, it's already the second one. And for now?
See second.
Is it second for now?
It is second.
Yes.
Everything
Okay. Yes, thank you so much. Yes, so coming closer to cohorts, these are women from age from 27 to 45, 85 respondents, women who temporarily stay abroad since February 2022, and women who stay in Ukraine when war has been started. And you may see the results, the outcome of the study on the screen. So for the group women abroad, we have higher PTSD score, and we have higher percentage of moderately severe depression and severe depression. And women who are in Ukraine and are continuing to stay in Ukraine, they have lower PTSD and lower percentage of moderately severe depression and severe depression. As the total score for women abroad, we have 88% of the depression and 65% with for the women in Ukraine with moderately severe and severe depression. What is the key outcome from my perspective? That women without usual environment and support of society, they have a really greater tendency to disorders and to depression itself. And we also have a stigma in the Ukrainian society that we need to overcome by themselves. We need to do something versus to go to and find psychological support immediately. So the lack of the timely psychological support also leads to the negative consequences, and we have such a high percent of the depression, in particular severe depression. And trauma reaction of bystanders and victims, for in particular for the temporary displaced individuals, is critically high. And as the key outcome, I want to mention that raising awareness about the need of psychological support for all Ukrainians during the first days and weeks after trauma event happened is really critical, and it should be a really well-developed state policy so far to raise awareness about this psychological support in such a difficult time for all of us. Thank you so much. I will stop sharing. I have only one slide as the outcome of my research, and I'm here to answer your questions.
Thank you so much. I'm now opening, of course, the chat. I figured we have some questions for Ms. Bolman that are outstanding, but I figured we could leave space for any questions for Ms. Hrubaia, and then we could use the rest of our time for questions for both of them, of course.
Of course.
I suppose, though, while people need to type, and that takes time, I will just read out a question for Ms. Bolman. You may not have data on this, but I'm curious about what factors you hypothesize as being the most significant drivers of these differences. For example, stress of displacement versus loss of social support / community connection versus exposure to additional traumatic experiences, etc. Of course, I imagine all these factors may contribute, but I'm curious about their relative impact as it relates to how best to intervene and provide support.
Thank you. It is a very interesting question. We have some little data about this. We asked respondents about if they were diagnosed in the past with PTSD, depression, anxiety, or other mental illnesses, and also we analyzed this data. Yes, and the main question was if there are more people that displaced from Ukraine that have mental illnesses in the past, and this hypothesis wasn't worked for PTSD, and also wasn't worked for the depression, but for anxiety it works. So more anxiety, people with a bigger anxiety level, they were relocated from Ukraine, yes, through the war. And also we asked if they visit psychologists regularly or have another mental support, and some questions about their health. But I think in the second round we will give more such questions. Really, if we want to know what is the difference between these people and how we can help them in the future the best. And also I need to say about some limitation for our research, that we have only less than 20% of male and other is female. So I think that we need to understand that like more people with PTSD can be our former soldiers that were in ATO, yes, in the war on the east of Ukraine from 2014, and we cannot have this data, unfortunately.
Thank you very much. While we wait for more questions to kind of formulate, I'll just go ahead and keep reading the ones that are in the chat. Do you have a sense about the differences between the respondents with and without PTSD? What may have protected the individuals without PTSD?
Yes, unfortunately, I cannot answer this fully, yes, because it was not our purpose. But I think that in future, such studies will be a big part of studies in Ukraine, because we need to understand what protected people without PTSD, yes, and that we can formulate this for further soldiers or further citizens of Ukraine.
And then we have our last question in the chat, which is, what were the demographics of the population of NDPs? Were most respondents in Kyiv and safer cities? I wonder what were the responses of NDPs closer to the front lines in the East?
Okay, thank you for this question. It is also very interesting and an important part. We have respondents from every oblast of Ukraine. And so it is very big survey for Ukraine. Yes, our sociological agencies have near 2,000 people, and we have 3,000 and more. But from east and south of Ukraine, we have only few people, and especially it is female respondents, and the big amount is from Kyiv and Kyiv Oblast, and from Ivano-Frankivsk. It's the center of Oblast on the west of Ukraine. And such a big amount of respondents from this Oblast causes that Oleh Lushak, yes, the main person in this study, is from Ivano-Frankivsk. So it is a very big amount of people from there, but not only Kyiv and not only west of Ukraine. We have more than few hundreds of people that were in Oblast that was occupied on the first months of war, and also from Kherson Oblast, Mykolaiv Oblast, and Kharkiv Oblast. So the eastern and the southern oblasts that are really with a big impact of war.
I suppose this question could be posed to either of you. Given the symptoms of PTSD have significant overlap with symptoms of anxiety, how do you separate the two?
I can say that with the PSL-5, we were oriented on the DSM-5 criteria, and they are differs from anxiety symptoms. So I think it's like a good diagnostic instrument to this. Yes, DSM-5 says about avoidance, intrusions, and so on, and anxiety says about bad feelings, yes, thoughts that we have in a circle, going in circle, and so on. So I think that the instruments help us to separate these two.
Yeah, I fully agree with Svitlana. It's a really comprehensive tool to investigate PTSD.
Another question we have is related to suicide. During either of your literature reviews or analyses, what has the rate of people dying by suicide, or rather, sorry, what was, I suppose, the rate of people dying by suicide with regards to PTSD or fear of the war itself?
Unfortunately, I don't have such data, but I think it's really important area for the investigation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, unfortunately, me too. I think that we will work on this problem maybe in a few years, because unfortunately it will be one of the problems, one of the big problems to Ukrainian society.
I have a question for myself. From myself. And I suppose I'm struck, Ms. Hrubaia, by your point about timely intervention. So I have to reflect on how telehealth for mental health services have become a lot more widespread since the pandemic, and that has clear implications for the invasion and for folks who are living in Ukraine. But there are also clear limitations on the impact of providers. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what's needed in terms of support for patients living with chronic stress, who are displaced perhaps internally So I'm curious if you could speak to that point.
Yes, thank you very much for this important question. And of course, you said that we have a really limited range of the resources where people can get such psychological support, in particular for free. This is number one. So we need to grow this number of the tools. The second one, we need to grow we need to focus on the communication part for people to know where to go. So, for example, there are some, but people do not know, especially the small towns, villages, and other ones. So they have lack of the information, what they can do. And raising awareness about that, it's really very important. This is my point of view.
Thank you both so much, and thank you to everyone for your questions. I'm being told that we need to wrap up and to go to the larger Zoom room. I'm going to paste the link here. And I just see that I think we just got another question in, but maybe that's something that we can actually incorporate in the larger room. But unfortunately we have to wrap up here. So Linda Cummings, I invite you to bring that up in the larger space. So if everyone wants to rejoin the larger Zoom room, this is that link. I just put it in the chat. Of course, you can also likely just go back into the same one that you entered the conference today.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for your moderation and your questions.
Thank you
both.
colleagues. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So welcome back, everyone. Now is the time for the breakout group reports so that each of the breakout room moderators can provide a summary of the highlights of each of the discussions. Can Maya Matalon, the moderator for breakout group number 1, please start?
Hi.
This was the group on supporting children. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, no, thank you. Yes. So the first breakout group was focused on supporting children and youth caught in the crossfire of war. Our first presenter, Dr. Velykodna, spoke about the psychological effects of the war on school students and changes in psychological services offered in schools using non-structured interviews and online surveys completed by school psychologists in Kryvyi. Data reported by school psychologists on emotional and cognitive, physical, and behavioral signs of war-related stress in students across different age groups indicated that a lot of them experienced fear, anxiety, and terror as the main stress reactions, regardless of age. And then response about school psychologists' work indicated that they've worked to adapt their activities to kind of adapt to this new reality. And the majority of the psychologists reported conducting more individual consultations and psychoeducations in groups than before, and a reduction in the amount of diagnostics that they were conducting. Our second presenter, Dr. Kolisnyk, spoke about the mental health of university students during wartime and presented results from a web-based survey that university students completed in 2023, asking about different experiences, including anxiety, depression, perceived stress, and well-being, and then showed us also results of similar survey conducted in 2020. She also reported responses to the type of work that with a psychologist that would feel most suitable for this population, and compared those results from 2020 and 2023. And her findings were actually that the majority of students now in 2023 were preferring offline counseling as compared to 2020. So thank you to both of those speakers.
Okay. Thank you very much, Maya, for the summary. Next, can Ella G, the moderator for breakout room number 2, please start? Ella? I don't know if she's here. I don't see her among the speakers, so maybe we'll jump ahead to number 3, Sydney Lee, moderator for breakout room number 3. Yes.
Hi, I'm Faith. I'm going to hop in
Okay.
for Sydney, who was
Sure.
doing such a great job keeping time and so forth during manning the technical issues during our breakout room. So we had two incredible speakers, starting with Olha Sandal. She gave us a very interesting discussion about experiences of trauma and how that connects to predictors or lack thereof of PTSD. The biggest takeaway from her presentation and research, I think, was that not everyone who has a traumatic experience will necessarily have mental health consequences, and that's a very exciting thing to consider. She did talk about statistically significant differences between folks who had experienced trauma and did have predictors of PTSD versus those that didn't. Two big things that came up were destructive strategies of cognitive emotional regulation. This included blaming others for the experience and the tendency to think about the experience, worry about negative consequences, and sort of have that negative sense of what they had gone through, versus more adaptive strategies, which were focused more on the future, what happens next, and searching for positive, meaningful, and even positive outcomes of what those individuals had been through. And yeah, I think the implications of this are numerous and very exciting for clinical work. So thank you very much, Olha, for your presentation. Our next speaker was Dr. Viktoriia Gorbunova, and she spoke to us about refugee experiences, mental health of refugees in the time of war. And a lot of what was most striking to me was just the sheer numbers of people that don't want to leave their home country despite the dangers and struggles of being at home. And that's one of the things that really contributes to family separation, which is obviously an incredibly stressful feature of these conflicts and refugee situations. And so two of the overwhelming factors that contributed to folks being separated from their family were martial law, and also, of course, as I mentioned, people not wanting to leave home despite the dangers that they were facing. I apologize, I got frozen for a second. Dr. Gorbunova also mentioned that a sense of humor helps a lot with the Ukrainian refugees having a mindset, and also that they don't, she mentioned towards the beginning, want to consider themselves refugees because the overwhelming majority of people have the desire to either stay home or return home. And so hopefully that refugee status is not a long-term thing. And finally, one major takeaway for me from the Q&A portion of our time together was that when you consider helping Ukrainians through this current conflict, that you are supporting people that are fighting for their homes and their well-being and their futures. You're not supporting victims, but fighters. And so thank you very much to both of our speakers for wonderful presentations.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Faith. Next, can Ella G, the moderator for breakout room number 2, please start?
Okay, thank you. So in group 2, Dr. Anrushko and Dr. Rudiuk shared their research on the psychological impact of war in terms of forced displacement. And Dr. Anrushko shared her research that aimed to study the psychological conditions of Ukrainians during forced migration in order to provide qualified assessment and form a program of psychological assistance. They believe that for a displaced person, they need to go through the functional level, mental level, and spiritual level in order to build resilience. In the study, they interviewed 516 Ukrainians in the United States who were forced to migrate. Interview topics include cultural, economic, and physical security, social altitude, and marginalization. And the partial result shows that economic security, such as unemployment, cultural security, life satisfaction, stood out. The next step is to gain deeper understanding of the psychological impact and to have better programs to support Ukrainians in this turbulent period of time. And our next speaker is Ms. Yana Rudiuk. She discussed her study on the psychological state of Ukrainians who were forced to leave. Ms. Rudiuk talked to 50 women from age 20 to 45 who were in high education and good life when the shoot happened. Fear, anger, obscurity, helplessness, neglection are the most identifiable feeling back then. Fear for relatives, flexibility for change, and determination are the most prominent factors that help individuals to go out of the country. And tools that help them to endure are children, plan for future work, and working with psychologists. So nowadays, the adoption is the most prominent psychological state for Ukrainians who are forced to displace to another country. It is important to look into the future to study how people feel today and how to help oneself to adopt and adapt to new changes in the future. And thank you again for both speakers and everyone's contribution in the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ella. Next, can Daniel Sauermilch, the moderator for breakout room number 4, please start? Thank you.
Yes, sure. I'm aware of the time, so I would like to keep this brief. I hope that's not a disservice to our speakers who gave very compelling presentations this morning. So we heard from Svitlana Bolman and Hrubaia on mental health outcomes following forced migration and differences in such outcomes between groups in Ukraine and abroad. Collectively, their research speaks to the impact of internal and external displacement in respect to prevalence and severity of stress, anxiety, and mood disorders. Some important takeaways are that Ukrainian women displaced abroad show a higher prevalence of PTSD symptoms and moderate to severe depression than those in Ukraine proper. And non-displaced Ukrainians broadly may demonstrate significantly lower levels of stress, anxiety, and PTSD symptoms. By contrast, findings from their work may speak to the effects of social support, but then also the importance of timely delivery of interventions for stress and mood disorders among those externally displaced specifically. So those are the major takeaways that I'm going to leave you all with.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Daniel. I think it's time for closing remarks, which will be made by Dr. Cece and Dr. Duncan.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lupis. Just to pass it over to one of our moderators, Sydney has a couple comments to share before we move into closing comments. Thank you so much, Sydney.
Thank you, Dr. Cece. One thing in our breakout group that I thought was pertinent to mention as we learn about Ukraine and the trauma that has been imposed there is a question that was asked is how do people that are not involved or are not experiencing the trauma help those and empathize with the ones that are, especially in the role of a friend. We're not always going to be in the role of a mental health care provider. So some of those things is just creating community, network and collaborating because Ukrainians are losing their jobs and their property, identity. So helping ways to facilitate that. And then most importantly, just creating space for them to feel seen and heard and to express themselves in whatever way they need to. And this is something that we can all take forth with us as we work on this effort together. So thank you, Dr. Cece. That's all that was going to be added.
Okay, so then I guess we're moving now then to closing remarks with Dr. Sisi and Dr. Duncan. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. So thank you everyone for participating in today's colloquium, and heartfelt thanks to our participants from the National Psychological Association of Ukraine. Just to share with you all that today's event is timely, as World Refugee Day was just 3 days ago on June 20th, 2023. And the theme of this year's World Refugee Day is Hope Away from Home, a world where refugees are included. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees talks about inclusiveness as signifying that, and this is a quote, regardless of the duration of their stay in exile, refugees yearn to continue their lives by pursuing education, supporting their families, and fostering connections with hosting communities. It is through these endeavors that they can find the hope they desperately seek. The UNHCR continues to say hope for refugees is more than a mere wish. It is grounded in tangible actions aimed at empowering refugees to regain control over their daily lives. As we close today, we return to the strategy presented by the Norwegian Refugee Council of Work Together. We hope the participants walk away from today's colloquium having learned something new and having thought about ways, big and small, that we can collectively work together. To live that strategy in action now, we invite you to share in the chat and in a survey ways that we might collectively collaborate in the future. Thank you so much, and I'm going to turn our colloquium back to Dr. Lupis.
Thank you. I think our next closing remarks will be made by Dr. Duncan, if she's ready. Not sure if she's available, but I guess oh, there she is. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Alex. Of course, I've been running around. I just want to very quickly thank all of you for your time, for your work, and also for your commitment to this global effort. This is truly a global project that we're all engaged in, and the work is so important, and the time is now. And so there are many, many ways to contribute. I was especially happy to hear Susan's remarks about the impact that parenting tips even can have. So there are many ways to contribute, both large and small. We hope you will fill out our poll, which is coming at you shortly, and we hope you will visit our website, and that link will also come to you shortly. Thank you so much, and safe travels.